Alright y'all, welcome back to Common Arms channel. So today's reaction video is going to be a little bit different. It's not focused primarily on another foreign militaries or another military's training or any of their selection processes or fitness tests. It's actually a shooting drill. So I had one of you guys recommended it to me. So I checked it out, and I have seen this video before. I didn't really put too much thought into it. It's kind of just one of those things that you see on like Facebook. If you have Facebook and you're scrolling through and you find something like this because someone thought it was crazy enough to share. But I have seen this before. Now, I've done plenty of shooting drills. I've done a lot of stuff on my own, but I've also done a lot of stuff either in the Marine Corps or in the Army as part of a course or just general like training that we would do. Now, understandably, in the U.S. military, you wouldn't be doing anything crazy like this, mainly just because safety is like a huge thing with the U.S. military. Even when you go to like Green Beret, SEALs, and MARSOC, and like stuff like that, there's a lot of stuff that governs, range operations, and you get a little more leeway, the more selective your unit is. However, stuff like this is still pretty much taboo in most places in the U.S. military. So that's just my caveat. I've done a lot of drills. None of them have been, obviously this dangerous. But a lot of those drills have trained, some of the stuff that this is training and building up to. Obviously just not to that extreme of a scale. But it's still interesting to check it out. So, yeah, we'll get right into it. And if you haven't seen this video, it's kind of shocking at first, but it's also pretty cool.
All right, gang, we're done with the museums. Now it's time to head out to the Dynamo shooting range where we're gonna hook up with Andre and the Russian Special Forces guys. Now, while Andre gets geared up, some of the Russian SF guys are gonna take me through their first drill. All right, TAC TV fans, I'm out here on the range.
Okay, so you can see the video takes place in Russia, which makes a little more sense. Now, I haven't trained with any Russians, but you sort of see online there's a sort of like a subculture in Russia where people just take things to the extreme. People climb in like really high buildings and whatnot. So I think this is just like the military equivalent. Now they're saying Russian SF. I'm not sure if they mean Spetsnaz, but hopefully they shed a little more light. They might not be able to either way. So that gives us a little more background as to how and why they're allowed to do these sort of drills.
With one of the FSB Alpha team members, and he's going to take us through a confidence drill they run their new operators through. If you don't mind, tell us the overall concept behind this exercise.
Основная идея этого упражнения заключается в том, что мы хотим подготовить нашего сотрудника к тому, что он будет находиться под огнем. Возможно, он будет ранен, возможно, пули будут прилетать в его бронежилет. Пока он стоит на ногах, он должен быть в состоянии стрелять в ответ, возвращать огонь. Стрелять в ответ быстро и точно.
Now, this is normally a drill that's done at fairly close ranges with handguns.
Да, мы делаем его из пистолета, потому что независимо от оружия, принципы остаются неизменными.
Okay, so what he said is pretty fair point. Pistol drills are definitely more important to focus on. If you have a pistol as like a secondary, you definitely want to have, I would say, more of 60 to 70% of the training is going to be with that pistol, and then the rifle would just follow suit. Now, a lot of the drills you do with a pistol will be the same as with a rifle. Whether you're doing basic shooting drills like to the chest, one to the head, you're doing box drills, rectangle drills, a lot of the stuff is going to remain the same. However, if you have a pistol, you're probably someone who works generally in close quarters. So with a rifle in close quarters, doing the marksmanship aspect is much easier, especially when you're talking about, having to do like a box drill. You don't have to worry so much about ammunition because you can hold a little more. You don't have to worry so much about reloads and everything because of that. And, marksmanship with a rifle is just generally easier. It's much easier to control the weapon. You have an actual like red dot sight usually, or what have you. With a pistol, you definitely need to practice that more, because I've seen plenty of people who can shoot a rifle, but I haven't seen many people who can shoot a pistol like very well. So that's definitely a good way to look at it. Now, so this drill is going to focus on So it seems like the first drill they're doing is going to focus primarily on actually taking rounds to your body armor and being able to actually engage while you're taking rounds. So it seems like it makes sense. However, more than likely they're going against someone with a rifle, and I can tell you taking rifle rounds to your vests is going to feel a lot different than taking, you know, like a 9mm to your vest. Like, yeah, you're sort of training the principles about, you know, you feeling an impact and everything. However, it's going to do more. It's definitely going to do more. So I don't know how effective it can actually be as far as, you know, actually endangering their lives to the point where they're shooting them with rifles. And also when you're doing anything, yeah, you can get shot in the vest, but a lot of times you have stuff like if you're using a pistol, it's probably going to be in front of you. If you have a rifle, it's probably going to be in front of you. So more than likely, if your vest is getting hit, especially like right around here, something else is going to get hit, whether it be your hands or your wrists. So it's still interesting, so I'm gonna check it out, but that's just what comes to mind when I hear of what they're about to do.
And then the ammunition that is normally used is standard full metal jacket ball ammunition?
Да, зачастую это обычный боеприпас, полный комплект.
I know we're looking forward to the drill. Stand by. The drill is essentially a very close range comp.
Okay, I would also argue that getting shot and then drawing your pistol and engaging is completely different than having your pistol out, trying to engage while you're being shot. So you sort of have the separation where you're getting shot and then you can think about it, okay, now I'm going into marksmanship. So I know I'm predicting it, this dude's about to shoot me. Okay, yeah, it might hurt and everything, it might add some stress. But you have that separation sort of you actually engaging and then having that person actually shooting you. Now they do have the person still like right next to the target, so he does need to shoot accurately. That is a big stressor. I would say that's more of a stressor than actually getting shot, is not shooting the person who's like right next to your target. So it's interesting though. Right now it just seems kind of strange, a little bit gimmicky in a way. But I mean, I'm not gonna. It's FSB, so you know, obviously they get some pretty hardcore dudes for that. So I'm not going to knock anything as far as that's concerned. But some of these drills just seem a little bit. I don't even know if I would call them outdated, but just seem a little strange so far. We'll check out the other ones though. I think the ones after this have a little more like realistic training value. So we'll keep pushing on.
Close range confidence drill with a handgun. Individual walks into the scene, pivots, and engages an individual probably 3 to 4 yards away in his hard plate, in his body armor. That individual then draws and shoots a target right by the head of the bad guy, simulating headshots when the individual just engaged him. Although I understand the concept behind this drill, in my opinion, the risks involved are just too great. I would never recommend doing this in the real world. But remember, we're in Russia. This is their country, their rules. It's not something I would ever do in the United States, but then again, we're not in the United States. All right, I'm back out here on the range with one of the FSB Alpha Team members. He's gonna take us through a multiple target drill that's kind of unique, involves public math, and it's a confidence drill as well. If you don't mind, run us through the basic concept.
Основная идея этого упражнения заключается в том, что стресс забирает концентрацию. И мы готовим бойца к тому, чтобы он мог усилием воли переместить концентрацию обратно на выполнение своей задачи. Он должен быть в состоянии принять решение, математический подсчет моделирует эту ситуацию, когда он в состоянии переместить концентрацию от отвлекающих его факторов обратно и посчитать задание. Ну и как обычно он должен стрелять быстро, точно и понимать, что происходит на всей траектории пули. Не убивать ненужных людей, которые находятся за плохими парнями.
I would assume that this is a drill that's done with both long gun and pistol.
Да, конечно, стрелять его, мы стреляем.
Okay, so this one's a little bit more complex for sure. So now they're adding math. So now they're really adding like thinking while shooting, and that plays a big role into any training. When you have to actually think, So like, for example, when I was doing the close quarter battle school, you would have occupant targets as well as, you know, threat targets. And sometimes the occupants would have like, they'd be holding like a power drill like this. They'd be holding a flashlight or a Pepsi can, something. So it requires you to think before you actually engage. So it required you to identify the hands, make sure that that person was actually a threat before you engage them. And that's a big deal, because sometimes, you know, when you're going through the house, you see someone, especially when they're pointing something at you, it's natural for you to quickly engage. But, you know, having that split second to actually think about it makes a difference for sure. So it seems pretty interesting that they're adding math into it in that sense. Now, I'm not really sure how they're doing it. They said they're trying to like count numbers while they're doing it. So we might be able to see what they mean a little bit more. But definitely more complex drill when you're talking about actually adding thinking into the equation. And then you're also adding stress. So stress inoculation is a big thing in the military, especially with someone who's combat arms. When you're doing any sort of training, especially shooting, you need to add stress. So in the Army and the Marines a lot, what they'll do is, you know, you'll do like an obstacle course, or you'll go running, you'll like run across the street or run down the street with all of your gear on. So you get really tired. And then right when you get back, you have to pick up your weapon and do like certain drills. So adding that stress and the thinking is definitely a big thing. It's definitely a good way to get that mindset, especially like a combat mindset. So very, very impressive as far as this one's concerned. So this seems definitely more well thought out as opposed to just getting shot, you know. But I'm interested to see how this actually plays out. But stress inoculation is very big. When you're adding stress to someone, the shooting definitely does get worse. But you can pretty easily, once you're used to doing it and you do stress inoculation a lot, you get pretty good at, you know, doing certain levels of stress, certain things that stress you out, and different things that would stress like different areas of your mind out, and being able to separate that and then accurately engage. But a lot of times it's just your heart rate, you know, like it's just hard to actually keep the weapon steady when your heart rate's going crazy. So let's check this drill out. I'm interested to see what it looks like.
Мы стреляем его и из пистолета, и из длинного оружия, в основном из карабина.
Good deal. Well, if you don't mind, let's get her started.
Да, пойдем пульнем.
Стреляй в двойку! Стреляй!
Назад!
Стреляй, тупой! В тройку стреляй! В тройку! Задержка!
Okay, so I think the person next to him is yelling. I don't speak Russian, unfortunately, but I think the person next to him is yelling numbers like to add up, and he's doing the math or like subtraction and everything. So that's pretty cool. Having someone yelling at you in general is stressful sometimes. Having someone shoot next to your ear is going to be stressful, especially just having a weapon that close to your face, if you're not used to it, is going to be stressful. And then having to think about the math is definitely pretty cool. And you can see he goes in and out of his shooting. That's another big thing when you're like training shooting, is to so what we would do is we would sort of like, you can set up targets at different ranges and sort of just like alternate between them. You can have someone yell out a specific target and you actually engage that target. But having the separation of engaging a target and then doing something else really quick and then going back to engaging it definitely helps with not only target acquisition, but also like target identification. So like being able to re-identify the situation and also reacquire your sights quickly once you identify that situation. So it definitely is a big thing that you want to train whenever you're doing shooting. I don't do anything crazy like any crazy 3-gun stuff, any crazy shooting competitions. A lot of my stuff is military focused, so this is where I'm talking from. But I know the principle pretty much remains the same whenever you're talking about like competition, at least 3-gun stuff. It's definitely good to add, you know, different target acquisition, sort of jumping in and out of it, so you can get quick at you know, acquiring your sights. So we'll see how that plays into this.
Тупой! Промазал! Тупой! 42! Стреляй! Стреляй в двойку! Стреляй!
Стреляй, тупой! Промазал! Собаку убил! Тупой!
Назад! Стрелять был! Назад! 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 Назад!
Под ноги стреляй.
All right, so that would have been embarrassing if he shot himself in the foot. I'm just going to throw that out there. So that's another thing you don't even consider. So you have certain holds that you would use whenever you're doing something. So if you're controlling someone, if you need to use this hand and you want to keep this, this hand busy and keep it in a safe place, we would have we call it a safety circle. So generally just keeping it here, pointed in between your feet, is a good go-to. So that's what he was doing. And you can see whenever you're adding stress and you're adding, people like attackers or occupants or what have you, when you're actually trying to control those people, you might lose your, not your motor function, but you might not necessarily be as sensitive to, the touch of your other hand. So things will happen, he pulled his trigger. It's normal for you to take your finger out of the trigger guard, obviously, but having that separation where you're going in and out of targets and controlling people, that might not be the first thing. So this is why people train. And, he had a good hold. It went off in between his feet, so it was okay. He might have been doing that just to flex on the people he was pushing, but I don't think so. But yeah, that's something you need to consider. It does happen. When we were doing, when I was in close quarter battle school, when you're doing holster drills, a lot of times you would try actually getting the trigger squeezed before you're actually punching it out. So you get out of the holster, start squeezing that trigger, and then the trigger is basically about to break by the time you punch it out. So it's quick shots. So that's another thing that goes into play. So pretty interesting so far. This seems like a pretty viable drill. Not a whole lot of risk involved. Just obviously you need to be careful with your holds and whatnot. So cool drill so far. I like this one. This is something that, I wouldn't mind doing if I had my own range.
Hey, if you thought that first drill was over the top, I got another one for you. The Russian Special Forces set us up for the second drill, this time with human obstacles.
23 плюс 35.
Do it! Airstrike up!
Назад! Назад! Назад!
That Iron Curtain now, mother!
Do it!
Назад! 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 Назад!
I wasn't ready for you to shoot over his ear. I was like, what the?
So I think he did it again. I'm not sure I think he might have shot while he was pushing the person back. That might be something they do. I'm not entirely sure. But this is a cool drill. Not necessarily cool that they're using human beings as, potential, hostages. You could just use cardboard. But it's interesting. A lot of people don't really consider what is behind their target when they're shooting. So a lot of people try and implement that whenever they go over firearm safety and everything, is know what is behind your target and what is behind your line of sight. So people will engage, especially happens when someone's concealed carrying. It happens where someone is trying to engage something, but they're not necessarily aware of what's behind the target. So someone might end up getting hurt in the crossfire. So that's something to consider, especially in close quarters. It's sort of like a game of angles, and this definitely goes into play when you talk about hostages. So being able to engage the actual cardboard, the bad guys, and actually knowing the angle and knowing where the person is behind it, it takes another dimension of thinking in a sense, where you're trying to be accurate, engage that target, but you're also trying to picture what the target or what the hostage looks like behind it. So pretty interesting. Again, we probably would never do this in the US, but it's pretty cool. I think another way of doing it, maybe not necessarily having a real person, but having, I don't know, maybe even an explosive target or something that just would pop, so when you hit the hostage or the bad guy, or maybe fill a target with a certain powder or what have you. So that would be a different way to sort of approach this, but I can see why they're doing it. It's definitely got a lot of levels of marksmanship training built into one drill. So I mean, you can see they're all pretty good shooters, or at least the dude shooting. It looks like his pistol is a little bit built for like this sort of shooting, but you can see he's definitely been trained a lot on his pistol marksmanship. No question about that there. And I'm sure his stress inoculation, doing this again, especially like even in front of a camera crew and with this dude like trying to stress him out, it's all like, it's just fun for him at this point. So it's really cool to see this stuff. We're going to finish this video out, but yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot to say. I'm not going to be a hater. It's interesting. It's something we wouldn't do in the U.S., but it's got its purposes for sure.
All right, talking to the Alpha guys offline, they kind of gave me some input behind the drill. They said that's a real advanced drill for their guys. And the theory behind it is they take guys through that drill once they've got everything else in place. Marksmanship, guys can think on their feet. It really boils down to two things: target identification and making sure they can track their trajectories and are not going to go into an innocent bystander. Pretty advanced drill, obviously a drill not for the faint of heart. I could potentially see that drill being used in the United States, but that's an extremely advanced drill. By and large, that would be a Russia-only drill.
Yeah, whenever you're labeling something as Russia only, it's probably going to be pretty hardcore. But yeah, for sure, that was pretty cool. I really enjoyed this video. I haven't seen it in its entirety in a while, so it's cool to like go back to it. I think when I saw it on Facebook last time, I thought it was kind of just like really gimmicky, but I can definitely appreciate why they do a lot of these drills. So like he was saying, knowing like what's behind the target, if there's an innocent bystander and everything, and that target identification. And also it really helps define that marksmanship, making sure that they can be accurate. Because if they're not, if they're just really slapping the trigger, or they're jerking the trigger, or they're anticipating, you know, their shots are going to go all over the place, and it's going to be pretty obvious, and they could potentially hurt someone. But like they said, this is an advanced drill, which makes sense. I'm sure these guys are amazing shooters by the time they're doing stuff like this. So they're not really too worried about it. Definitely cool to check it out. And I definitely have a greater appreciation for why they're doing this after going through all the training that I have in the Marines and the Army. So if you guys have any other cool drills like this or any other training, feel free to send them my way. I love checking this stuff out. It's cool when it's a little bit over the top. It's stuff that, you know, we can't do in the U.S. So it's almost refreshing to see, you know. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I definitely had fun looking at this one. But I'll see y'all in the next video.